Welcome to week 2 in review. I hope you had a good week and you got something important out of the class this week. It was a very interesting week. We covered a lot of basic stuff, some access control, business drivers. How do we go about deciding what we're going to put in there? What are the business requirements we want to look at? As a company, we need to decide what do we need to protect and what is confidential and what do we need. We also looked at the different classifications from a government point of view, some of the different clearances. We went over unclassified, classified, secret, top secret, and all that stuff for the government side. But for the business side, we also had to deal with public, internal only information, sensitive information, and highly sensitive information. And we got to make sure that whoever reads this stuff has the proper access, that it's not for anyone in the company to have. So it's a really important topic that we need to make sure that people only have the access that they need to in the systems that they need. Also, how do we look at how we go about declassifying information? After so many years, we can declassify it and figure out, if it's not going to do any harm to the business or the government. We allowed this information to be declassified. We looked at some of the cost benefits. What happens? What the drivers are for cost benefits? How do we go about determining the cost that we're going to put on information? And again, business, how we go about this. Also, what happens if there is a breach or something gets in there? What are we going to do about cost and keeping that down to make sure that it's right? We looked at the IT risk management. We know there's risk involved in owning a business. We know that. And so how do we go about understanding what that risk is? What level of risk are we willing to take to make sure that our business runs properly? We have our inventory we need to take about. We have vulnerability assessment, threat assessment, full asset assessment, mitigation plans, risk assessment policies. These are all some of the basic topics that we looked at this week to ensure that we have this. But again, it comes down to protecting what we have and who has rights to it, who can see it. We're not going to get into great detail of that. That was chapter 3. Right? Chapter 4, we looked at all the different laws that were out there. The U.S. over the years has implemented many different laws for us to follow to protect the companies, to protect the customers, to protect investors, to protect patients. And that's the purpose of all these laws. Most of these laws were implemented after something occurred. The financial markets, when they collapsed, new laws were put in place to protect that after Enron. The health insurance is a huge law. And we have to make sure as IT professionals, how do we go about that when we're putting in an implementation of an item, that the laws are followed. So we need to know what the laws are because we have to make sure we don't violate them, especially in the HIPAA Act, the Privacy Act. Only certain people can see patients' information, but yet has to be available to them whenever they move to a new doctor. So it's a tricky standard that we have to follow, but we have to know what the laws are because we have to make sure we follow them. And in the IT world, it's an important part of what we have to do. If you work in the financial world, there's a whole bunch of different laws about filing and antitrust laws and making sure that customers and investors aren't deceived or duped. So there's a lot of that we have to make sure that we follow. Children's Internet Protection Act. How do we ensure that what we're putting out there follows the Internet Protection Acts and what has to happen? In 2007, there was the law for the Homeland Security Presidential Directive. How did we go? We got to make sure we follow these laws for and acts when they're put into place. Let's see, what else did we cover? Critical information. But basically, chapter 4 was all about how we go about it. What are the policies, standards, guidelines, procedures that every employee must follow? So we have to make sure we have systems in place that allow them to be followed. That someone who doesn't need access to something doesn't get it accidentally. What is the user's accounts? How are we setting them up? And it gets back to day 1 where we looked at all the different operations that are there. So that was chapters 3 and 4 for week 2. So I hope you enjoyed it. You learned something. Also, you had to do your weekly paper, your 2 discussion questions, your journal, and a quick quiz. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Remember to smile, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.